Well, guys, I'm emotionally exhausted from the 2-hour Sister Wives season finale. Overall, I don't understand why Kody was so rude this season, and I would not be surprised if Christine is now living in Utah away from all the Flagstaff drama. I have to say, I miss the good old days, the cul-de-sac, and when Kody was actually respectful in his confessionals. So let's get into it. This is my recap and reaction to the Sister Wives Season 15 finale. In this episode, the wives and Kody met with their little lawn chairs on the Coyote Pass property a whopping 3 times. Basically, those were the main scenes with some fillers in between. Each meetup was increasingly tense, and at the end, wow, like a complete debacle. The first time the family met up in Coyote Pass with their lawn chairs, it was a casual picnic with Hunter, who had just come back from the Air Force Academy. Seeing Hunter was actually the best feel-good moment of the whole episode for me. Hunter wants to see more of the family, basically, and Kody and Hunter are not seeing eye to eye about pandemic rules for the family. Kody makes an analogy and says, if you don't want to have kids, you don't have what. If you don't want to get the virus, you don't see anyone, basically. And he points to Hunter and says, COVID will change your life forever, and is being very dramatic. Then everyone walks away and nothing changes or gets resolved. Absolutely nothing. This was by far the least dramatic of the meetups. Trust me, they get progressively worse throughout the episode. Following this one, there's a cute scene where Mariah and Audrey FaceTime with Mary and her mom Bonnie, and Mary is struggling with filming herself because she's not really tech savvy, and take a look at Mariah's face watching her struggle. It's so funny. So let's go to meetup number 2. Janelle is on a mission to fix the communication issues with the whole family. But first, she meets with Mary privately. God knows Mary and Janelle don't have a great relationship background. Remember when they did a therapy session together? They both arrived in separate cars. So I'm happy to see them meet to discuss anything. Mary says one of the issues is that people don't talk to who it needs to be talked to, and she implies there's behind the back talking in the family. That's a major problem. This whole season, Janelle has been championing the let's get back to how it was dynamics and let's communicate better, and I applaud her for that. So now they meet at Coyote Pass and Janelle starts the conversation. Like, how did it come to this that Janelle is the relationship therapist for the family? Someone call Nancy. Seriously, she should have been here. Janelle gets a whiteboard and writes stuff down, and Christine seems the most defeated at this meetup, and she says she hates it when her ideas don't seem to matter. And Kody chimes in and says, I feel the same way. It's so hard to get an idea heard. I think he's referring to the one house idea, which, Christine opposed and he was so for, and it just went nowhere. Then Kody blurts out, I don't need to write anything down because I don't give a beep. I don't enjoy the relationship anymore because it feels like a constant fight. This was one of the major statements of the episode for sure, and I think it caught all the wives off guard at, what a dark place Kody was in at the time. Janelle in her confessional is like, I think he's in a bit of a darker place, but anyone who's been watching his confessionals this season, Janelle, he's been in a dark place this whole time. Christine's face when he said this speaks volumes. Seriously, someone should have invited Nancy to Coyote Pass. I wonder what she would have said about this. Mary is crying in her confessional and admits that the family is falling apart. I'm actually shocked that Mary is still so emotionally invested after saying, that if she got sick, no one would come to her house in the last episode. And then Christine starts to read the family mission statement. Remember the family mission statement that they made in Las Vegas? And it just seems like she read it and they're all kind of looking down and avoiding eye contact. That's not a good sign. Then Kody says a bunch more of kind of like interesting things, like the family is an obstacle to his own goals. He doesn't think they would stay together if he passed away, etc. So that was pretty intense. Meanwhile, Janelle wants to laminate the list or the whiteboard or whatever they just wrote on and put it in their wallets. Like, I think they need more help than a laminated card, honestly. So Christine says that she needs to talk to them in 2 weeks. So they're going to meet up again in 2 weeks. And this is going to be the time when Christine's going to kind of ask them to move back to Utah. But first, Christine has to call Kody. She says, when the bill passed that decriminalized polygamy in Utah, did that mean anything? And Kody says, no, not to me. We learn that he was about to actually put an offer on a property in St. George before they decided to go to Flagstaff, and all the wives vetoed no. They weren't comfortable in going back to Utah. So Kody's basically saying, you guys didn't listen to me then, and now it's too late. He doesn't want to move again. And then Christine starts talking about how her dad is super sick and she would love to be there with him during this time. It's sad that in a way Christine will not be able to get what she wants unless 4 other very stubborn people agree with her. So yeah, let's see how that goes. Kody says, I think she's smoking something, and he doesn't think anyone will want to move. But despite everything, Christine thinks that maybe she saw a glimmer of hope during that phone call and that she can convince Kody. The next scene is so cringeworthy. Honestly, the worst scene of the whole episode. Kody's daughter Isabel, she needs surgery for her scoliosis, and she needs to go to New Jersey to get that surgery. They're planning it for about September. And so Christine, Kody, and Isabel meet outside of Christine's house to talk about that, because Isabel now has an over 50% curve on her spine and her back has been hurting terribly. Christine says from a scale from 1 to 10, Isabel is hurting like an 8 or 9. So it's no joke. She's in constant pain. And then Kody is kind of insensitive and says, if it's in September, then I'm not going. So he is trying to get them to wait for the surgery, but Christine is saying, listen, she's in pain. And he even then asks, do we send Isabel by herself? And Christine in her confessional says, I'm about to go irate, and I was about to go irate in my living room. What is he talking about, sending Isabel alone by herself to get a surgery? Then Isabel is crying. She says, I'm not going into surgery by myself. And ultimately, she's crying and she goes in the house. The conversation ends with this awkward kind of Kody saying he has to run. He has to run to the grocery store or something so casually. And it was just awful, an awful conversation. And I hope Isabel, wasn't too hurt by that. All right, so after that, we are ready for the third and final Coyote Pass lawn chair gathering. Christine is trying to make her case for moving to Utah. They're all sitting there and she's kind of going on about how when they went to see the Dargers, she felt normal with them. And, when Kody had proposed moving back to Utah before Flagstaff, she felt like she didn't want a sword hanging over her head there. But nothing is now happening on Coyote Pass. Something about the angels singing. I don't know. The angels singing thing has always irritated me when they say that. But ultimately, she said, I'm proposing that we don't develop this land and that she's dreaming about Utah. Unfortunately for Christine, the conversation did not end up going her way. Robin just chimes in and says she has to think about the long-term effects for Solomon and Ariella. What if they change the law again? And Janelle says there's nothing for her in Utah and that her gut reaction to what Christine is telling her is anger. And you know what? I thought Christine and Janelle were kind of like a team, but I mean, there was no team here, unfortunately. And Kody says, my kids like it here. And he didn't even make an effort to stick up for her whatsoever. Now, poor Christine is crying on her lawn chair. It's very emotional. And Janelle, I mean, she does try to be like a therapist for Christine, but she kind of doesn't know what to say. She says, how can we honor you but keep moving forward here? And Christine says, we're not moving, are we? And then there's silence. And then Mary, the MVP of this moment, looks back and she says, Christine, come here. And she tries to kind of show Christine the beautiful mountain because it's kind of like Utah maybe. And Christine just ends up saying it's not enough. And Mary says, make it enough. And Mary says, you don't get to give up like that. Christine is literally done. She says she doesn't even want to do marriage with Kody anymore. Mary's trying to give her a weird motivational pep talk. I mean, you know what? Christine's just tired of feeling like she doesn't have support when she really needs it. It's all unraveling. And the episode kind of ends at this terrible point. So where do we go from here? Season 16, what is gonna happen? I wonder if Christine is now living in Utah and we just don't all know it at this point. I don't know. It was brutal, guys. It was brutal. Anyways, that wraps up the tumultuous season 15 of Sister Wives. Let me know what you guys think of all this in the comments. Thank you so much for watching my video the whole way through. There was a lot to talk about because it was 2 hours. All right, guys, bye.